The next few slides are going to go through the approach we took to building our KM tools and then the processes. And so there were three main steps to this. The first was looking at what came before us. So we conducted an inventory of what we call the legacy KM tools. These were what we inherited from the predecessor project before us. And so the central challenge that we faced was we had to transfer over a lot of these tools to be able to maintain continuity of service. But at the same time, we had to maintain openness to the new context that we were operating in. So some of our key learnings during this phase were that legacy tools, they come with a lot of established processes and learning, but at the same time, there's a lot of baggage with them in that there can be resistance or inherent barriers to change. There can be pushback to just using new things when you can use something that's familiar, or staff can just be um, find it daunting to move over information or data that's stored in legacy tools. And so preserving the old gave some stability and comfort and allowed us to continue to operate pretty quickly. But at the same time, we didn't want to just use the old. We needed to take on the challenge of looking at what do we need now? We needed to take a new and holistic look. And so that's what we did in the second step. So we looked at how are our needs different now? And also, what do we want our future state to look like? So this was a real brainstorming exercise. We did a holistic review of our needs and what the gaps were and created a process for tool acquisition. So the landscape had changed since the legacy tools were put in place. As everyone knows, there's always new technology requirements, staff, new tools coming into place. And so we held several sessions to talk through what ideas do people have, what are our gaps, to try to identify what, as Felicity and Sue noted, what the pain points were and how we might be able to solve this. So we also put in place a process to evaluate tools. So there was some clarity and transparency about how we were as this team of 25 people, how we were going to be making some decisions. So some of our key learnings at this point, at this stage, were that well, we started out with somewhat of a formal process to say, this is the process that you go through to consider adding a tool to our suite of tools. And over time, we realized you need to make it easier for staff to experiment with tools. And so we wanted to encourage people to be more flexible with looking at tools. We also recognize that leadership needs to demonstrate their willingness to adopt new tools, but then also drop tools. Indecision is a decision, we realized, and so we need to demonstrate that we were making decisions. So with that in mind, we set out some of our decision criteria. Staff needed to understand that we couldn't take on every tool that seemed cool and interesting. We were balancing these different factors around value, cost, complexity, suitability, training, the relative advantages and trade-offs, and that decisions needed to be made about balancing all of these factors. So some of our lessons learned at this point were that we needed to strike a balance between having this openness to new tools, but also the fact that there were some constraints. And it can't be too easy to add tools to a portfolio, or you end up either over budget or with tools that are duplicating functions, and then you have different silos of people using different tools for the same purposes. So we needed to set some constraints there. At the same time, we learned that a lot of these tools, you're not sure how much you'll be using them or how many people and how long it will be useful. And so for a lot of tools, you need to keep the commitment low if you're not sure that the investment is worth it. And this sort of flexibility just gives you more agility in the face of changes.